temporal thing to it. This is not my personal history from the primitive to the recent or anything like that. This is part of the installation that was about. It's called Cinerosa the Gardener. It was about gardening, and I'd always had a garden, and so this was just about. And there was a story that was this about this guy that abandoned his regular existence and became kind of a gardening bum. He would garden in all these places that were untenable for gardening, like little gulches somewhere or old pill bunkers, that sort of thing he would live in, and garden in some poorly, thinly watered gulch somewhere. But anyway, so I made this gardening scene. It was on, I guess, the museum in Roswell, but this is part of it. And there's a guy hoeing, there's somebody sewing in the back there, and when I showed this thing at Roswell, it was like I had to give a little talk, kind of like this, and these people came from church evidently with great flowered hats and the women's auxiliary place or wherever people come from and such, to hear such obligatory talks. And one woman came up to me after the talk and she said, "I've been delegated by the other women to ask you this. Why don't these people have pants on?" And it had never occurred to me. This is something, all the stuff to me was just structural, like whether somebody had a penis or whether somebody had this or didn't have a knee or didn't have a foot, or it was all the same to me. It was all just about balance or imbalance. But carry on. More slides, I guess. Anyway, now I think the next ones are just slides of individual postures. Just a bunch of, that's a guy digging. And I've always thought of my things not particularly as sculptural entities, but as ensembles. But there's the guy sewing, and just keep on going, I guess. And those horrible figures in the background are from something else, and I just voiced them again. There's a guy carrying something in buckets, and here's somebody planting an invisible plant, and they're planting an invisible seed of some sort. But this is part of this larger ensemble. I don't actually have a slide of the ensemble in its real situation. I've always kind of been interested in the real, situation, not in the sense of something realer than a room, but the peculiarities of an actual space. To some degree, could take these arrangements. But like Bill said, I carry this paraphernalia around with me, and then I kind of use it like a form of kind of guerrilla installation, hopefully there'll be enough of it, or little enough of it, or there'll be some intense or singing feeling to the whole thing. I don't know what that is. Anyway, carry on. There's the birth of the Buddha in the background. That's the posture that the Buddha is traditionally. When the Buddha was born, the Buddha came out walking and took 7 steps and pointed to the earth and to the heavens and said, I ask you and I ask you to declare, that I'm going to be the Buddha, and the sky rained flowers and so forth. But anyway. More gardening, and the belly button of some fiendish creature in the background. Carry on. Here's another installation that's called Fuzz. This is one of the installations. I did a series of about 6 called The Construction of Kuan-yin Lake, which was an imaginary lake. And I thought, this flashed in my mind, construction of Kuan-yin Lake, and so I looked on maps and I thought maybe Kuan-yin Lake is a place that I peripherally picked up something and reading about China or something, but I couldn't find a real place called that. And but I wanted to make this thing, so I kept making these shows called, different aspects of this lake. One was the Kuan-yin Lake Dam, and one was like, I think this one was, one was another slide. Everything's in the air. You're supposed to be underwater inside Kuan-yin Lake, and Kuan-yin is like the Buddhist Chinese version of Avalokiteshvara, an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, who's the kind of embodiment of compassion, and Kuan-yin is sort of a Chinese moon goddess fertility version of this that became female somewhere along the line. Nobody quite knows how. And this is the Raft project, a very early version of it, with Gene Newman's painting of Icarus in the background. And I don't know how long this is. That entails a distance of, 50, 60 feet. And that's a dolphin. And that funny thing with that guy sitting astride that thing is actually a constellation. And that big old blob is the big star Vega in that constellation. And it's the constellation Lyra. So I just, as a kind of a joke, thought I'd have this guy plucking an invisible lyre. And Gene wasn't too thrilled about it, but you know, I insisted on my little jokes. And, but this is the raft. These people are embarked on you know, the human embarkation, like, or they're barking birds of extinction. I don't know which, but you know, like this was set up in a warehouse. There'll be other more civilized versions of this along in the slideshow. I think later I'll talk about some of these things as distinct events or distinct kind of clumps of my own doing, or whoever's doing it is. That's another raft. That's the front view. Actually, Gene and I looked at all these paintings of the raft, that Jericho's painting of the rafts of Medusa, and I didn't like most of it. But I did put one little stupid cultural reference which got me into a lot of trouble, like I was imitating Jericho's raft by having this guy thrown backwards. It's a dead guy on the raft, kind of half floating in the water. He's all Greek with the way he's drawn, and you know, like a lot of kind of half-assed anatomy going on. But I just did my kind of skeletal, you know, tarry version of it. I'll talk about also the materials I use and that sort of thing, I think, after this. So this slide part is sort of, I don't know, doesn't thrill me too much, but I figure if you don't know what I do, it's better to see like this at least. That's the hoeing guy from the gardening scene. I guess just go on. And here's a little knife fight. This goes on in Kuan-yin. We did a pavilion, but I've got a bronze version of it, and I had to do this over and over again because the bronze casting destroys the thing, and then I finally didn't even use it on the finished pavilion at all. So I'll talk about that. Oh yeah, one of the versions is, one of the parts of the Kuan-yin lake thing is, I wanted to have a pavilion from which you could view this imaginary lake. And on the pavilion, I wanted to have something that I call the life and death lump, which was just people doing what people do, like making love and killing each other, and as Jewish dreams, but, you know, nurturing children and dying, and, you know, I had a Kuan-yin in what's called the posture of glory. He's sitting on the edge of the whole thing, kind of quizzically and humorously observing the, you know, unbelievable tomfoolery of all this. But anyway, this is actually the version of the Kuan-yin Lake, construction of Kuan-yin Lake that was where you're supposed to be underwater. And people actually said they got that feeling, but of course I had written on the wall you were supposed to be underwater, so, you know, so, you know, I wonder where they got that feeling. Anyway, and in this one I just took stuff and put it on the wall, and I just kept, these are all paintings of Kuan-yin, and I just kept plastering them on there, and pretty soon it looked kind of like temple-like in a way, kind of like some kind of hokey, you know, instant temple. If you just poured water on it and it sprouted up that way, you know. But and this is another version of that. This is a Kuan-yin, and somebody bought that and they left it out in the yard all winter, and the snow kind of melted it. And then they wanted me to make it over for them, so I just took it home and it's like, fine, I just threw it away, you know. I couldn't remake it, but this was the one where everything was in the air mostly. And this was at Linda Durham Gallery in Santa Fe, and I always thought that was a nice room that I used for that, but now it's like, now I'm such a smarty that it seems like a really tiny room. At that time, it was perfectly adequate to the level Kuan-yinning that I was up to. Okay, carry on. Oh, this is the celestial rat. This is rat chasing the celestial bowl. Oh. This is, this was just, I was supposed to do the sets for this kind of dance production, and so I wanted to do a night sky, so I made up all these imaginary constellations, and then I just had somebody take photographs of them, and I used the negatives and put them in slides, and then poked holes in them for the stars, and just totally made up the sky. later I became, guilty and did the real sky, as we'll see later on. But I mean, the sky, the way, the observed heaven. This is the way the sky is from the back. Now go on. And this is some creature. Go on. I don't, this is just some fuzzy creature. I also make these. I don't know, they're really quite huge, I guess, but sometimes I just make installations by putting together just 15, 20 drawings that are 10, 15 feet high. And I did one that was called, 15 fighting men for my son. My son was sort of having a wee problem with drugs and stuff, and we'd always gone to see samurai movies when he was a little kid, and so I made this, it's really big, tall figures that were kind of scary, but I just thought, it was a kind of pitiful father's gesture of power toward his son, but he was so zonked out that he never saw it. But it's like he's fine now. But this is a wonderful studio that I had that was turned by a Zen master into a vegetarian restaurant, and and in the process, of course, everything became cloudy. Now this. No, anyway, go on. It's like, this is another installation. This is the Kuan-yin. This is the Kuan-yin figure. She's holding the jar of memory to the compassion juice that the dew of compassion that she sprinkles on the world Kuan-yin was said to have been born from a tear of Avalokiteshvara when he saw that the world, how crappy everything was and how much pain there was going on. And out of this little tear egg, a little child Kuan-yin grew up, and Kuan-yin grew tremendously huge and terrifyingly big. And then people said, "Whoa, too much! Come back down a little bit." And so Kuan-yin, out of her infinite mercy, came down to a sort of a normal, playful size. And she's often represented as a teenage girl or some playful, kind of prankish. And one thing I liked about the Kuan-yin idea was that, unlike, say, Yahweh or that sort of thing, there was not this kind of retributive. Kuan-yin always has a positive thing that's like somebody else has to do the nasty, dark, hellish work. Like Kuan-yin won't do it. Kuan-yin only helps with childbirth, or helps fisher folk in a storm, or helps when you're lost in the mountains, or that sort of thing. Anyway, yeah. Oh, another cloudy Taoist fool. Little did I know that I would someday look very much like that myself. Anyway, go on. Another installation with a saintly person painted on tar paper with white spray paint. I'll talk about the means which I use to achieve these incredible effects later on. Go on. Oh, God, horrible. Anyway, I don't know what can one say? These are huge drawings. They're big. Anyway, and they see they're so big you can't even this is called the setting of the maybe I should. I don't know. Good. Maybe that's the end of it. This is some installation that was done in someplace in California, and it was like an art center, and it had an upstairs and a downstairs, and it had a balcony. So I took all these water birds and I flew them off the balcony. They had the ricketiest ladder that I've ever stood on in my life. It was this really scary experience. But this is the balcony, and up on the balcony I had some kind of a launching pad of creatures and things. And often I would think of the walls as sort of the edge of a ravine or a brushland or something, and so I would have these sort of vegetal papers. I would hope they were paintings or collages or something, but I would always give myself this escape that they were just kind of vegetable papers that were, there as part of a kind of a hokey stage set. So that if anybody said, "Well, those aren't paintings," of course not. They're not paintings. Anyway, next. And this is just on the verge of going off this thing, and out here there are more birdies way up high in the air. It was kind of graceful, kind of pretty. And anyway, now what did you want to say? There's some poem. Those are plaster. There's a little birdie on the branch. Worthy of 30 minutes contemplation at least. Now go on. This is a very early installation called Downstream, and it was like at Hills Gallery actually at Santa Fe, and it had what I was called my first symphony, and it was like this tape recorded junk that I played the flute about 8,000 times and re-recorded it, and then I had my kids go out in the street and record all kinds of sounds, and I just collaged it all together, and it was just I was more playful in those days, and this had a sort of narrative aspect to it. It was like a kind of about going down river and what one would see, and I had paintings on the wall and that sort of thing. So I've always, so this Kuan-yin lake theme has been going on in a sort of diminished, watery fashion for a very long time, and I've always been interested in a sort of naturalist kind of way in water and birds. And even as a little kid, my dear aunt would take me out into the marshes and try to throttle me, but it didn't work. No, go on. This is the this is the raft project, and these are Gene Newman's paintings. This is an a middle version of it. We've got a version now with these humongous paintings, which I've got later on, that are kind of, I think, the right scale, actually, for the raft itself. Anyway, Gene sold all of these, so he had to do something, And this is the Big Dipper. You can't see it here, but it's a Big Dipper. That was another object. It was a literal dipper that represented the constellation of the Ursa Major, but when the handle has all the right places for the right stars and all that. But it was a little joke. I just couldn't help it. Have a few little. It's just like a Big Dipper. Anyway. Another raft. This was in San Antonio. We didn't change actually the raft itself and the creatures on the raft at all. We changed everything around it quite a lot in all ways until we got everything up to scale. I just had a kind of flash of vision almost of what the raft would be, and it took a long time to make it, but it was only a matter of making the stuff. There wasn't any kind of great. There was only one intuition that's entailed in it, and then Gene kind of, his practice is to paint and obscure things, and paint and obscure, and paint and obscure, and paint and obscure, and so he, by that method, was kind of for some time forced to kind of dance around this thing, and then finally we make these humongous paintings that actually make the raft in the right fit into this sort of universe that's represented by this deal. And anyway, I guess enough. Another one, Endless Raft. This again is that Lyra constellation, Lyra, and this is the way it would look in a star map, and that is, I say, it's the large star Vega, that lump of tar, as anyone would. And one thing was, Gene was kind of an amateur astronomer, but it forced me to. I'd always been interested in little plants and voles and stoats and monkeys and all that junk, but I never really, something kind of mathematical and geometric and intimidating about the heavens. I don't quite know why, but it forced me to actually lie down on my back and, in the backyard and really deal with the sky to some degree in a kind of somewhat analytic way, but it kind of made the world a little more round to me, so because I had to kind of catch up with Gene about astronomical knowledge, and I had to study some physics too, so I kind of had to go to home schools again by myself to do this project, and I don't know. Oh my goodness. This is numbered. I've had to make this thing over and over. This is another version of the same thing. Like I said, there's a bronze version. I was in this partnership with this guy at the Foundry, and they decided they were going to take this to some kind of fancy art show, and so they cast this. I said, you can't. They wanted to sell it, you can't sell something like that. Nobody wants it at home. But anyway. So I have several in my home. No, No, go on. And this is a show that was at the Fine Arts, so-called Fine Arts Museum in Santa Fe, and this is some of the stuff from the last version of the raft project, and also some of the stuff in my case from the Kuan-yin Pavilion. God, this is off the raft project, and I built this kind of weird sawhorse. This was. I didn't like the idea, but actually it was very elegant. Gene said, why don't we abstract some moments from the raft project and put them in this show? And we did. These are for, what we did is we took the 10 degrees north and south of the celestial equator, which is like the projection of the Earth's equator onto the heavenly sphere, and we decided to, we made all of the sky all the way around, 10 degrees north and south, and then we selected 4 sections of that, and we made them this big. These are paintings, or whatever they are, about 15 feet wide and maybe 10 feet high. And this painting was a collaboration of Gene's and mine. That's wax and oil paint. And this one Gene did by himself, and that one I did by myself. And I did it actually for him to draw a star map on it, and I made it kind of starry. And it's iron oxide on paper, but then it looked so nice, that we just left it kind of, mute like that. And so I don't know what it looks real painterly though. I mean, in real life because it's so bloody big, but it's not minimal. It's got little star dots and stuff on it, and of course, so do all the people. This is the same guy that was falling off the raft. And made a little way to hold his back up. And this is from the Kuan-yin Pavilion, and I was calling it, who was that guy? Aeneas and Anchises, like one of the myths of the founding of the Roman thing, aside from the one of Romulus and Remus and the wolf, is that Aeneas brought Anchises' old dad on his back from Greece, on water skis. On his back. And and I made that thing, but what's his name? Luis Jimenez he's got something called a border crossing. There's one of them down. I saw it in El Paso, and he came and saw this, and he said I copied it from him. But it's from an ancient source, an ancient mutual source, called the catalog of his last show. No, it's from, I don't, go on. And this art critic came and he said, what was that? That wasn't the last one, the one with Aeneas and Anchises. He said, well, what was that about? He said, that's the most brutal thing in the whole show. I said, no, that's tender. That's a son carrying his father on his back over a perilous place. And he says, well, it looks like, grasshoppers humping. And he says, it looks like somebody jumped on somebody else's back in an alley. You see, all of these things that, this eminent art critic thought. And anyway, this is kind of a constellation of figures before the marvelous masterpiece that I did of blackness. Oh dear. Anyway, that's another. It does look elegant though, and this is something that Gene and I concocted. This was one of the star maps that Gene did a drawing. This is it's called Ophiuchus, and this is Serpens. And and in some cosmologies, it's a giant guy holding a snake. It's called a snake handler. But it's a huge constellation. It goes way down in here, and, way up in there. But this is a section of it, and then we wanted to do a little collaboration. So so on this, Gene had just been to India, so I drew a giant picture of Shiva on there, and then Gene just screwed over it royally until he had this strange glyph, and we made it the right size, and we stuck it onto that one, and then we put a Buddha of mine that's on the raft in front of it, and we declared it a work of art. And no, it was. No. Anyway, next, please. This is Jesus. This is the constellation. This is Sagittarius, as you can plainly see. things where you don't know whether the raft is more perilous and you want to get in the water, or whether the water is the drowning place and you want to get onto the raft and you want to save this kid. But so the raft had also the same thing as the Kuan-yin pavilion, in the sense that I wanted all these postures and all the, kind of like the comedy humane of, Balzac had wanted to write enough novels that he could encompass every aspect of human life, or, I wanted to do something kind of fancy and big and mature and blah, blah, blah. And, well, it happened. Oh. Okay, here's another, good grief, a detail of the famous knife fight. I think we've seen enough of that. But see, you can see here the majestic crinkles. It's an installation view of that same show. And back here, this is also on the Kuan-yin pavilion. This guy's kind of putting his pole through somebody else's heart. I mean, believe me, there's also lots of other like sweet and tender things. It's not all. It's somehow, even myself, I seem to think that I'm this macabre being, but that's not the case. There's hopefully some balance. This was for this performance. I just poked holes in a negative. I just thought I'd put it in to kind of, in the same vein as some kind of minimalist quietude to end the evening. Oh, no, go on. I think there's even more of this junk. Here's an aluminum iris. It's very dangerous. Anyway, that's all. That's an aluminum iris. And here is somebody giving last instructions to the quarterback. No. No, anyway, go on. That's another view, a close-up of this person hurting another person. And you can, after this, I'll to some degree go into the means I use to, achieve these grisly effects. And okay, go on. And here's a blurry installation. This was up in Taos, and it was this gallery with very low ceilings, and the whole place was just congested with stuff. There was stuff hanging in the air and on the floor. It was actually quite uncomfortable but that's what I wanted. I kind of thought of the whole place as just, like one time I had an installation that you couldn't get in, you could actually just go to the edge of the room, but it wasn't. And it was in a commercial gallery, and it was like not, profitable. Anyway, carry on. And this was over here at this Johnson, right here at UNM, and this is the fat one. And I have something. This is Kuan-yin, another Kuan-yin, and this is a Kuan-yin. And this was, but I had something I had done called food for the. Actually, this is a Kuan-yin over here too, and there's some little Buddhas on the walls, and I had something I called food for the fat one, and I was thinking of the fat one, like, how death is presented as this skeletal creature. I thought, well, death is not the skeletal creature, but the fat one, eats everything. And so I just made this fat creature and kind of had it and I had a bunch of small drawings of this fat creature with all kinds of stuff floating, everything, horses, elephants, everything floating in front of it. Anyway, carry on. See? Oh, and here's another constellation. This is Radus Maximus, and no, I don't know what this is. This is another made-up constellation. I don't any longer know. Some of these were real constellations, but I just kind of had little funny takes on them. But as I say later, I became a dutiful son of the cosmos, and actually did, was Gene the real nitty-gritty. And this is a kind of a series of paintings called the Baby Room. And I had a young son who was born, and he was very young when he was born, as a matter of fact. So I thought it would be nice, kind of like some kind of old-fashioned thing, like a frieze of just continuous painting that went all the way around the room, instructing this child about, how people used to have like kind of little borders that had like kind of galloping teddy bears and stuff. Well, I thought I'd have like galloping vegetables and galloping, like sort of an instruction, a little primer on maybe what the world was like. But my painting style is so twisty, as one can see, that it got out of hand. And see, this is ant ground and with lily shadows, and it goes on and on like that. And but anyway, it was sort of like a kind of a note to my newborn son. Anyway, the gallery I'm in Santa Fe, the lady said I wasn't a painter, so I'm going to show some paintings. So, she told these people I was a painter. Next, please. Next painting. This is another baby room frieze, it says. And, I can't even read my own writing. It says jar of compassion juice right here. Amrita, where the hell is it? Oh, it must be over here. It's gone in the fuzz. Anyway, next please. And then here's a series. I kind of do a series of paintings each year. One of my garden and one of something else like walking in the mountains, trying to make a wire of invisible connection between different things. And this was a series called Why Do I Still Have Eyes? This was about going up in the mountains in the wet season. It was just three little mushrooms poking from a rotted branch, and that's what it really is. I mean, you can actually, this big, I totally lost it. I can actually see a mushroom now. But so in that sense, I mean, I was brought up in a tradition of kind of abstract painting, but I've always liked things. And this says apple branches and July apple lights in leaves, and then it says, well, why do I still have eyes? You can kind of see the globular light from the apples there, and go on, I guess. These are just, as I say, they're kind of like a notebook to me. These are painted very thick, and I make my own paint out of oxides and glue from oxides from, they're actually usually used in pottery glazes, but I kind of like what happens. This says a story of fiery crap over the mountains. And I was watching this horrible kind of Mount Pinatubo sunset over Los Alamos and thinking, my goodness, what have they released this time, And it says weakness coming from radiation leaks out there. Anyway, it's a lyrical painting. It really is. No. It says garden trampled by bad little boys and girls. Anyway, every year these kids would come in my garden and just when everything was ripe and start hurling pumpkins around and having tomato fights and letting my chickens howl in it. And so this was my pitiful response. Aside from stomping and making bites in unripe corn ears. Anyway, carry on. And here's another one. Why do I still have eyes? The old aspen vulva. Have you ever been up in the mountains and you see all these sockets and eyes and male and female parts on the trees, and people also carve their names, and it's all kind of this strange inventory of, anyway, that's what that's about. And it's not meant to, here, Kuan-yin. By the way, in Chinese, the female version of Kuan-yin is let's put the shy in there for the yin, so it's Kuan-yin is the actual female designation. The posture of lordly ease, and actually you can see that here. Here's the hand, here's the posture of lordly ease, somebody's kind of sitting at ease with one leg up, and here's the arm holding up again. And it says, view beyond the edge, dark land of evening. And I'll maybe, if I happen to feel like it in the talk, I'll explain that a little bit. Kuan-yin is also supposed to reside over this kind of western paradise, you can hear me whether I hold this up or not, right? Well, you don't care. Okay. You asked for it. Chipmunk holes in spruce cone litter, and there are some chipmunk holes. Anyway, these are all like kind of little, as though when we're keeping a little guy. And this is just an example of one season's ramblings in the mountains, and I just like to do that. These aren't very big. They're like that big. The moss specks. I had this family called the clodfelters, which were just clumps of earth. And then I have another family called the moss specks, who are clumps of moss. Anyway, the moss specks, bulging moss fall. And this is like up in a little big, sharp, wet rock. And I don't know, these are almost like close-ups of some event, like just the flash of water out of the corner of your eye, or just the funny green of, under the shade in just sort of a mountain rivulet or something, Anyway, carry on. Let's see, spillway, just the water coming down in the little side creek. And it says up there, why do I still have eyes? And that's, kind of a classic. I mean, if that were a part of some giant painting, you might even see rocks and stuff in it. But as it is, what do you see? A little froth. Anyway, enough. Oh God, one more. Ramus Maximus. No, this is one more fake constellation. But a lot of these, of course, turns out are real constellations, except for the pinholes. Like the stars are in all the wrong places, like the western star. Okay, here's another Kuan-yin installation. This is another construction of Kuan-yin Lake. And this turtle was once called the last tortoise of Pinta Island. It was an installation about the last tortoise on one of the Galapagos Islands. But then, and it had nice colors, but then I somehow dipped the whole thing in tar and it became this rather, old fellow amongst the fishes and the birdies and such like, and the severed heads, evidently. Anyway, carry on. Oh, again, this tiresome installation at the museum. Enough. Is that it? No. Oh boy. Oh, this is like kind of like that guy that carries, what's that guy's name? Sisyphus. That keep carrying the stone up the mountain and it keeps rolling down. But this wasn't what it was meant to be. It was just part of clearing land for the gardening scene. But I don't know what more to say about it. It's the guy's having a hard time. Okay, enough. I'll ask. I don't know whether to explain what I'm up to by asking questions and then not answering them, or by just forcing myself on you furthermore, or let me try asking a question. No, let me try asking if there are any questions, and then if that doesn't lead to where I wanted to, I'll just stop asking. Are there any questions from I haven't really explained myself, and I'm not going to. So, but in this sort of roundabout of what I've said during this, I know I've left almost everything, I've said a lot of words, but I've left everything, unclear. So, and I know that probably most of you are unfamiliar with my work, so I just wanted you to see the actual stuff so that you wouldn't be deluded by the sweet words that I was going to say. But anyway, I'll ask anybody have any questions, and then no. Got a question, Brad?
I'm not going to help you clarify anything.
Okay, she will answer. Okay. Well, as I said, I've always kind of been interested in what they call nature, in the, just your regular sense, not in human nature. And the fact that it is that making human beings, I never made human beings except I drew them all the time, but I just was kind of, misanthropic, and I always thought that the human species was, rather poor one. But, despite the fact that I kind of half-assed, I have a deep interest in Buddhism, but, which seems like it should have a deep humanitarian thing. I mean, after all, you're, supposed to be interested in saving all sentient beings and that sort of thing, but I've always been a little bit afraid of the crowd and all of that, but here I'm making my own crowds, so I avoided for maybe, the first 20 years of my adult life making human figures because I just didn't want to look at other people, frankly. I didn't want to, which turned out was required. It turned out that I actually had to look at people to make the postures right. I couldn't look at art books. I couldn't, I had to watch some old man going down the street. I had to do stuff that artists had done for a long, long time, rather traditional stuff, like, I didn't want to go with my buddies to some nude drawing class, so I just had to look at people doing their work and see how somebody lifted something once again, see how how the legs really bent and all of that, not how Goya had done it or how it was shown, But so I really had to look at something I hadn't wanted to look at. Like I thought I would see, deep, scuzzy ugliness when I look at people, but I didn't see that at all. I actually felt some sort of tenderness. I mean, though in a way, I guess everything being black and tarry seems to belie that, but it doesn't really. If you can see that there are people holding babies and all kinds of other stuff on the rafts. And I don't have any photographs or slides of the Kuan-yin pavilion, which is a thing about as big as the raft. And it's, I think, pretty good. I think that and the raft and this gardening scene, which I also don't have any slides of intact, are really pretty nice, hefty chunks, and I've spent a lot of years doing the three of them. The raft, in a way, is like the Kuan-yin pavilion, but the Kuan-yin pavilion, in a way, is more psychologically comprehensive. It really shows just what people do and what people want to do. I mean, people evidently somehow or other just want to make love and want to kill each other. I mean, whether they do or not, everybody. I doubt there's a single person in this room that doesn't want to kill somebody. And so I just doing the interior and the exterior as one level. And then in the Kuan-yin pavilion, I have fishes and flora and fauna and natural, blah blah, nature type stuff, not human stuff, all littered on the floor underneath the pavilion, and above are birds flying, and there's a text. There's a tape recorded text that goes with it also, and there's also a book which I will now read for 13 hours. No, you do have a question.
I was wondering if all of the events and things in your installations are sort of just non-judgmental kinds of situations or actions. I want to know if that is true and if that's something that would be just
Well, like I said, I had a very dim, I mean, people seem very a fearful species. Even the tenderest parts of being a human being are somewhat, intimidating. But I mean, the Buddha's initial pronouncement was that there is some kind of pain in life, and that ultimately pleasure results in pain too. And like that, let's say, making love with somebody, you want to make love with them again, or it results in having children, and maybe the kid dies, or maybe you get divorced, or maybe you end up hating this person, and you wonder, how could this have happened? How could you have lain in bed with this person and loved them so deeply, and how, like you see this person somewhere some other aspect, or one of your, as I say, somebody, like some, beloved person dies, or which is bound to happen. I mean, there's no way anyone is going to escape that. Not only your own death, but those around you are going to die. And it's like, I'm not saying this is some kind of horrible Old Testament prophetic Isaiah type way. I mean, it's just, go outside, a bird will fall off of a tree any moment now. I mean, it's like, it's just the way it is. And the peculiar part is that human beings can't seem to even cotton to that at all. It's just unbelievable. And why does it cause so much anxiety? Is the anxiety innate? Is it just innate, like that? You just clench up, or is it something that's conditioned, like this, that you could uncondition yourself from being clenched up? So, in the sense of the postures that people take, I don't think there is any judgment. I could have gotten every one of those postures out of my own experience, which isn't any richer or less rich than most people's, I mean, I've never stabbed anybody through the heart with a long pike, but, there's still time. I did chase somebody with a knife once when I was drunk and went to see an old girlfriend that I had no business going to see again. Met her boyfriend. It's like, but I'm sure everybody has a story of that type. It's like, if not, you can go watch it on TV. So which is horrible in itself. I mean, it's bad enough in real life. But anyway, I guess what somebody like Christian Murray would call the disorder of our lives is, so deep that I was thinking if you just put the stuff there, not helter-skelter, because as Bill said, I obsess over this junk. I make endless arrangements of it, and I do want some kind of tuning, some kind of consonance, and some kind of funny invisible vectors between things that I also experience walking out the door. And in this room, there's a kind of consonance. There actually is a harmony, but I don't know what it is, And I don't think to name it would help. I think that naming the harmony would, pretty much kill it. But there is a sort of majesty to that, like some kind of funny pipe organ with many stops and many things going on. And it's like, and they're all discrete, but they're all not discrete, But so me, somebody that makes lumps of stuff, I don't have much choice. I got to make a lump here, a lump there. So what is the, and trust that the continuity is the same as say the continuity in this room, or the continuity in the star fields out there, and all of that. To me, just like say doing the stars, I don't know how to get to that. I could see like say 5 people standing in a room as stars, and I'm not saying that in a romantic sense, or make a poem about it. I'm just saying that all arrangements seem to have this odd similarity. I remember once when I was a very young man, I had some people over to dinner, and they drank too much, and they scattered stuff around, and they left. And the next morning, I didn't clean anything up. The next morning, I looked, and I saw, rather revelatory. I saw all, kind of, disarray of food and forks and everything, and turned over cups, and everything looked like the most unbelievably beautiful order, rather like maybe Cézanne saw a certain still life, or sort of somehow figured out how he could see the woods. You can't see the woods. You know damn well if you go to sketch something, like you can draw a person, you can't draw them. There's no way. There's too much and there's too little, and it's like, so that question, which is a common question of seeing, I guess for me the thing was I just didn't want to look at people. I just didn't want to look at the people singly or in congregations, it's like, but once I started to, it became a kind of fascinating, not voyeuristic, not like drawing, asking somebody to your studio to take their clothes off and draw them. It was actually sort of the opposite of that. There was none of that management. I was drawing everybody on the run, and I still do. I don't draw people from life, but I do more of what I've heard that the Chinese guys would do. They would go out and look at things quietly and for a long time, and then they come back and they, and I just happen to have that kind of old-fashioned thing. I can actually look. I didn't know that when I was younger, because I was living in New York and I was painting these huge, bloody abstractions that I didn't know that I could see something and it was imprinted and I could find where the print was and actually not duplicate it, but it was available to me to look at quietly and for a long time inside, because I was brought up to make a great swashbuckling splash somewhere and blow your head off, and be done with it, but here it is, quarter century or so later, and more than that now. So I've been forced to go backwards, I guess, to do common things, I guess you'd say, to actually, and also I had a farm up here up north for years, and when I was up there, I was painting these abstract paintings, and I realized nobody, this old man would come in the house, he'd say, "What are you doing?" And I was embarrassed by what I was doing. I was actually ashamed in his face. I mean, he was just walking up the stream to go feed his cows and secretly smoke a cigarette behind his haystack, because his wife wouldn't let him smoke. He must have reeked of tobacco when he came home, but I don't, but nonetheless, the myth was preserved of his, lumbular purity. Anyway, this guy, he was my friend, and yet I couldn't, it was like some, really dirty part of my life, painting abstract pictures. And it's like, so I decided I better do a little research. If I really want to do something universal, it better be universal on the everyday level as well as on the level of going in. And so I got down to some pretty common and hokey denominators, and I'm glad of it. I'm glad I didn't, end up driving some little sports car up Fifth Avenue, like I saw de Kooning once, was drooling spaghetti, drunk out of his gourd, here's a sort of brilliant guy, and he's like just gone, and it just was, I said, I don't care if I'm talented or not. That's not a fate that is attractive to me, that much brain damage. Maybe it's necessary, and maybe I've incurred it too. Like by the tar and all the other, maybe I've taken, maybe without even getting high, I've gotten, I've tarred myself into a cosmic corner, See, I told you I was going to answer any questions. Anyway, I didn't answer. I don't know. Yeah.
Have you come back to painting then after a long period of not having done it?
I've always painted. I've always drawn the whole time. But it's just that somehow the sculpture kind of I got a little bit known for it. And then like the gallery I'm in Santa Fe, like one time I was in there and this woman comes in, she said, oh, I know, somebody told me there are 5 good painters in Santa Fe. And could I see Gene Newman's work? You know his work? And when it says yes, and I said, where? And she says, who are the other ones? And I said, I won. Like that in this childish voice. And then he said, shut up, you're a sculptor. And she said, but I was determined to show a few paintings anyway. I do, yeah. That was an early form. Like I said, I would use them as, one of the first Kuan-yin things, I just used the paintings as kind of a, stage parts and props, it's brushwood and all that. But my intention is, I see them as paintings, and I see, the art historical formal thing of a rectangular thing. Although I've pretty well busted out of that on occasions to where I'll have some horrible long piece of cardboard just straggling off into nowhere. And of course, it's very hard to put it up, and nobody can buy it because they can't frame it. I mean, what are they going to do? I have a 10-foot wide frame with this pitiful piece of cardboard straggling across what? Across what they're going to straggle. I mean, they put it in the corral, and it's like, having building a corral for a worm or something. It's like, anyway, go on. Any question more? I don't even see. I'm sorry, I didn't actually hear the last part of what you said.
No, your sculpture and painting is really similar in a lot of ways. I'm just thinking about Gene Newman's paintings, which are very austere, as you mentioned.
Right. Well, we assigned ourselves tasks.
Yeah.
Gene doesn't do sculpture, and so we assigned us. I said, and I had a sort of a flat, little intuition. I saw that raft just like that, just blank, nothing to do with Jericho's raft. But I also started using all kinds of references so I could explain what I saw to Gene. And one of them was the raft of the Medusa, and one of them was, the barge or barco or whatever in Italian it is, the boat that the damned are taken across the river Styx into hell, in the main part of hell, in Dante's Inferno, and on and on and on. And so I was aware of those implications, but we just gave and Gene had done star map things about 10 years before that. And we'd also done an impromptu installation where he drew on the wall with chalk. He did the constellation Hercules, and I had all these birds migrating by the stars on the roof across the ceiling of this place. And I also had some human figures, and then I told some friends to go up and see the thing, and they called me up and said, well, it's gone. And I went up there was a bake sale going on, and I looked at this closet had the door slightly ajar, and I could see the foot of one of the sculptures sticking out, and I thought, well, that's life, But they'd also erased Gene's rather huge drawing, but that was the beginning. And then we backed off of it. We saw that it was like, and I agree, pie and cake are very important, but no, they are. This collaboration is kind of an improbable one, but we were good friends, and we said to each other, we're not going to, and neither one of us, we're very, he wasn't going to give an insight. We said we're not going to do anything like people do, like diddle around with each other's styles or try to force some third style, some communal style. And we didn't, and that's why there's this somewhat awkward thing going on. But that last version that you saw, we collaborated on a lot of that stuff. Those paintings were so big, and Gene, as I say, erases everything interminably. I mean, talk about having to just drag me away, but, so there really wasn't time for him to paint those huge paintings. So he painted that one big oil painting, and then I made him a field of wax on which he drew this with a brush, another constellation, and then I was preparing that giant iron oxide thing for him to draw on, but we decided it was so lovely that we would, and those decisions, those were communal decisions, and then gradually we started working, And we sold a bunch of these. We made small, this whole circumference, the whole celestial equator. We made the 12 stations of that, the 12 hours of the, or the 24 hours of that, of the sky time. And we did those together. We don't even know. We were selling them. We were selling them like as, communal works. And some he did, some I did, some we did together. Finally, I remember going in once and saying, "Oh yes," Linda said, "Oh, we sold that." And I said, "Oh yeah, I did that one," And then Gene would come in later. He said, "Oh, I did that," And then some we knew, but it wasn't like we were mocking each other's hands. And finally, we actually became true collaborators in all the senses of the word. And we're still good friends. I mean, that's amazing. I've been in theatrical productions where there's no way, like that thing with those little stars. That was fairly disastrous. It was fairly disastrous as a production. It was also very much so in a personal sense. But I don't. But I like the paint, and I'm going to do it. Whether I don't care what I'm thought of as, and I don't care about the installation aspect of it. I didn't know what an installation was. I never heard the word, and I don't think there was a word. There actually wasn't a word installation. As such. It was a word that came from somewhere else. And my things were not, they were too cluttered. They didn't have that sort of funny minimalist thing, like one wire hanging, tautly in the midst of a gray, that kind of classy look, the kind of, zingy kind of. and it's just not going to happen. Anyway. Yes, sir.
You talked about how the work is tender and violable, and how the tar sort of skews that reading.
Yeah.
How'd you get onto tar?
Okay. Well, they're not all anymore. Now I'm using wax because I breathe in and kill myself breathing that stuff. But the wax is pretty deadly too, actually, as it turns out. But I didn't know that, The tar also was an innocent adventure. At first, I got a commission to do. They were building a new city hall in Davis, California, and they wanted me to make an outdoor installation. So I studied that area. I wanted to make something related to the land. So I drew up things called 4 little shrines of the countryside, and I was going to make them out of ferrous concrete. And I didn't like the way the concrete looked itself, so I started putting stuff in the concrete and doing all kinds of junk to, I just experimenting. One of them was putting tar on things. And so I had all these experimental objects that had tar on them, and they didn't hold up very well to the weather. The cosmic radiation eats the tar pretty good. And that funny sheeny twinkly look was eaten by the weather pretty quickly, just like if you're on a roof. And but I really liked the way it looked, even though taking that stuff inside was awful. I mean, because the first time I had a show here with the tar stuff, the stuff was still wet, and I went away and I put the stuff in, in the gallery, and I went home. And I could see there was a kind of a very prickly feeling in the air. I could feel it, and there was, actually overt hostility. Anyway, I went home, and I came back the next day, and there was like no breeding, nothing, I mean, it was like a few days before the show, and I could smell it. The whole gallery was, it stank. It reeked of petrochemicals, and it was, I didn't mind it, because I, of course, I only had one brain cell left anyway, but it's so, a giant amoeba entered I go in the room and there are pools of tar. Overnight this stuff is leaked out in the cavities, these crinkly things, and it's really awful. I mean, it's a little scary. I mean, and I think that they thought I had done this as some kind of bad boy, saboteur act, that this was part of my, it was an event, a happening, an old-fashioned happening of the worst sort. And, and it was a happening, but anyway, I cleaned up all that tar, and the stuff set up better, and stopped leaking and drooling, and so by the time of the opening, it just merely stank. And a friend of mine, a local artist, he came and he put his head in and he said, "You just can't go into a room because of the tar, and so, and in fact, actually, would never enter my studio either. He would always stand at the threshold. But Anyway, it still reeked of tar, even though they opened all the windows. I cleaned up, I took all kinds of solvents, but that's how I got into it. It was a failed experiment in outdoor sculpture. But I just liked the way it looked. And so it became kind of an aesthetic, and, but a very inappropriate aesthetic, if I may say so. And because it, was like I took something that was not good for that environment, and I put it indoors, and where people were, not passing out. But anyway, at the opening, there was wine passed around, but there was also these people were breathing all these fumes, and they bought 60 pieces. Like there were, it was like so. And then all these people loved me, like the people that ran the place, because there were just little red dots everywhere. It was like the measles, It's like these pieces of paper that was just thick with red dots, like some kind of little. The chiggers were running all over it. And it was like, and they hugged me afterwards, whereas they had disdained me before. My stock went way up, but that's how I got into the tar business. Now I'm a good boy. I like to sit around for quite a while before except once I took this pavilion. I took it down to Houston. There's a museum down there. It's like a tin can. It's like the modern art museum there. It's like a big tin can, but it's got a warehouse floor. And it's like, and they don't have any. Anyway, and she was very nice. She said, "Well, that's fine. It was just, we'll do it." So these guys had on these white suits, white jumpsuits on all the trucks, And of course it was awful. I said, I know how to do this. I've done it before. So I said, I'm not going to ruin your floor. So I put a cosmetic of plastic, and everything was fairly okay. And then this assistant directress, who was the hard girl, who was the girl that, slams you and makes you, do things, in an appropriate manner, came out. She said, we can't have this. We can't have this. And I said, well, why'd you have me come all the way down here to Texas with this stuff? I sent you, photographs and everything, and, so. So I said, I know how to do this. I would just put plastic everywhere. Then just before the show, I'll cut it away, and it's like, so I started setting up the pavilion, which is just wood, and then I started taking these figures and putting them on there, and it's like, and she said, and they thought it was going to be a really hot item, so they had it right at the entrance to the place.